Okay, this is a continuation of the 7-loop bracelet tutorial. What I made in the previous tutorial was this bracelet here. It was with 4 bicolor blue and white loops and 3 single color loops of black, 2 black and 2 orange. And we did the handshake join to make a loop at the top with no ends hanging out, because the loops were doubled around each other in this clasping each other at the top, so we didn't have to have any ends sticking out. All the ends are only at the bottom. This is a way to make a really fast, quick, fun little bracelet with a loop-on adjustable fastening. Now, that one had 4 bicolor loops, so they could double over fine, and I mentioned that if you had an odd number of bicolor loops, you would have to have 2 ends hanging out the top, which I then made one with embroidery floss, which is one of my favorite things to use. For it's so many colors, get it in small quantities, and it's very silky and nice colors. So I made this 7-loop bracelet with an odd number of bicolor loops, and it has, as I said, it had to have 2 ends hanging out at the top because of the one single bicolor loop couldn't be looped around. It had to have the 2 ends. I twisted them and then twisted them together and tied a little knot, so in the bracelet, when it will kind of mix with, those 2 ends will kind of mix with the little braidlet ends of the other half. However, there is a way to make, with using embroidery floss, or maybe anything, but embroidery floss works very well. You can make you can use an odd number of bicolor loops and not have any ends if you double your floss, and that actually ends up with as thick a bracelet as the one I demoed, because the yarn that I used for that was a fairly standard. This is Elan.com Lara. There's other brands that are like this. It's about the thickness of doubled embroidery floss. It's not very twisted like embroidery floss. You can really separate the strands. They're slightly twisted, and it's a smooth, highly mercerized. There's other brands that are like this. I don't know how to pronounce it. Mille File Fine, 2 words, or fine, is similar to this. There's other brands. I use it for demoing on these. I often use it for demoing on these videos because it's thick enough to show. And a 7-loop, for a 7-loop bracelet, it makes a fairly thick, a fairly sizable one. Let's see, is that? Whereas embroidery floss, regular, not doubled, makes a finer bracelet, which I actually really like. If you're going to double embroidery floss, it actually ends up even, I think, even nicer than the thicker yarn I use. It's about the same thickness, but it's really smooth because embroidery floss just melts together. Since the strands aren't twisted at all, when you double it, it doesn't show as a clunky doubling. Like if you double other yarns, they show in the braid as being doubled. You can see the separate yarns lying together. It looks a little clunky. Okay, so what I want to show is the trick with the really fun way that you can make a loop with a doubled strand, a bicolor loop that a single loop that does not have any ends at the top. What I've done here is I've cut out loops for the lengths to make this exact bracelet, but with doubly thick, twice as thick as this bracelet was. And here they are, the strands. They're about 32 inches long, each of the strands, because they're double length, and I wanted them to be about 15 inches, each loop to be about 15 inches long, plus a little extra. So I cut them about 32 inches long, and what I'm going to end up with is, in the braid, when it's on my fingers, the loops, I will have 5 bicolor purple. Well, this probably looks blue in the video, but it's really a light purple. 5 bicolor purple and black loops, and 2 single color gold loops. four of these bicolor loops will be double length and will be bent in half to form twice as many loops, and there will be one odd singleton. So let's get this out of the way. And this is how, I already tried to do this video and it took so long. Here's my product, the handshake join at the top. One half has three doubled loops. There are two gold loops, not three. One half has three loops. Two of them are gold. Two gold loops of doubled strands. They were formed by one doubly long loop bent in half. And the one singleton, the one bicolor singleton loop, which has no ends at the top. And this is what you can do with, there's the join, there's no ends sticking out. That's what I'm going to show you first, because it's the new info. So here are all my strands. I basically have, I'm confusing my own self, I have 5 strands of black, 5 strands of purple, and 4 strands of gold. The 4 strands of gold will make one doubly long loop, which will bend into 2. Now I have 5 of the purple and black. 4 of them will, like the gold, make a double long bicolor loop. But let's get the odd one out. The 1 strand of purple and 1 strand of black that I will use to make my singleton loop. It looks like it's double length, but it won't be when I make it. So I'm going to tie. I have here two 32-inch long lengths of embroidery floss that will become one 15-inch or roughly 15-inch long loop. I'm going to tie the two ends together. Tie the other side. Now I have one about 30-inch long loop, and that's not what I want. I want one 15-inch long loop of doubled strands. I'm going to take this, I don't know if it shows, I'm going to take this, it's in my two hands, and I'm going to make a figure 8, then I'm going to turn it one more time. It's still a figure 8, but it's doubled in the middle so that both purple shanks are above and both black shanks are below. There's a double twist in the middle. Now I'm going to fold it in half, bringing my two hands together, bring the two knots together, and as you can see, the purple is on one side of my fingers and the black on the other, and then separate this and check it out. On the bottom where they join, they're linked together. That in the Middle Ages was called departed bows, meaning bicolor loops, or the way they're hooked together. I guess you could do it with a single color too. It's departed loops, and there are no ends at the top, so you get a loop of double thickness. Whatever fiber you use, whatever yarn you use is double thick, which is fine for embroidery floss. And there are no ends at the top, and this loop will be one of the loops in the handshake join, and it won't show any ends. It'll just be, as I showed in the previous video had one singleton solid color loop of, what was it, orange. This will function just like that in the braid. So you almost don't need to see the rest of this. I will demo setting up the other loops as well, since it's a little different since they're doubled. So for the, you could actually, these 4 strands of gold will become one doubly long length of loops. So I stretch them out so they're all the same length. This is a bit different than I've usually done it. I'm going to try just knotting the whole bunch. Oh, here's one that isn't in order. Get it straightened out. I think I can actually just tie, it's funny, I haven't ever done this before, but I think you can actually just tie the whole bunch of 4 together down at one end. I've always done it keeping two separate. This is the whole bunch of 4 all together. I might end up with some twists. At the knot, but I don't think it's going to matter. And tie the other end of the bunch of 4 strands together down here. And now to make one loop of doubled strands, I'm just going to separate it in half there. Okay, there's my loop. I'm somewhat worried actually that I made this knot too far in compared to the, well, I'm just going to leave it for now. It should be twice as long as the singleton loop that I made. So there's my gold loop. Now I have my 4 doubly long lengths of purple and my 4 doubly long lengths of black. I'm going to take 2 of the purple lengths, 2 of the black lengths, and tie them together at each end. That will be one, since everything's double thick now, that will be one double long, there's a lot of doubles in this demo, one double long bicolor loop. Should make a bigger circle because you can just work it up. There's one knot. Go to the other end, make sure that these are aligned well so that you don't have one baggier black loop. You want the strands to be in the loop to be the same length. Okay, there's the other knot. Let's pull that. One of those black loops. Okay, so there's one of my 2 double long bicolor loops, and here's the other. So this is basically the rest of this tutorial. You can just use the previous one I made. This just shows how to use embroidery floss doubled to get about the same effect, and to be able to do an odd number of bicolor loops without having that extra, those ends at the top. It'll be a totally clean handshake join. I will demo putting it together. Kind of wanted to show in this how you also don't need to do a header cord in quite the same way, but that header cord is it is a good way to do it. Okay, so here are my 2 doubly long bicolor loops, my 1 half length bicolor, it's actually the full length that the loop is going to be, 1 single bicolor loop, and the doubly long gold loop. I will make the right side, my right hand is going to and eventually be holding 2 gold loops and 1 bicolor loop, so those will go together. That will be 1/2 of the handshake join. I'm going to bend the doubly long loop, the gold one, in half. Bend it in half. I didn't do that very well. Stretch it out again. Okay, I'm going to bend it in half. Lie it. Does this even show in the camera? Yeah, kind of. Here, we'll turn it a little bit. Lie it with the single bicolor loop with no loose ends at the top. So great. There it is, the top linked to itself. So I have there a double loop and a single loop. They're going to function together. And the other half of the handshake join will be these 2 doubly long bicolor loops. So I'm just going to bend, they're hooked on the camera here, bend them in half. And, well, before I do that, I'll thread them through. So they're going to go through, let's see if this shows. Those 2 doubly long loops are going to go be hooked around through the one single loop and kind of around the double loop. So this is my setup for the handshake join, and I'm just going to use, for the first bit of this braid, I'm actually just going to use the right half as a header cord. I'm going to make a slip knot. You have to be a little careful with slip knots. One, there's two ways to tie them. So you can tie them in such a direction that the right side pulls out, or that the left. You want the side that's not going to pull out to be what you hook on as your header. So that's going to be my header cord. Does that show in the camera? No. Let's flip this up a bit. Okay, what I did was I just put a slip knot on that whole bunch of loops. That's going to be one half of the handshake join. I put it over my C-clamp. Here are my doubly long bicolor loops. They're now bent in half to form. They started as 2 long loops. Now they're going to be 4 regular length loops. I'm going to mount those on my fingers and just eyeball them and untwist them the best I can. It doesn't really. They don't have to be perfect as long as there aren't a lot of twists up at the top where they hook through the, and you can want to pull them till they're all the same length. Here, let me adjust my chair, pull the camera back a little bit, and I'm just going to look at them and untwist. That was better the way it was. That doesn't look too bad. And let's see on this side, actually they don't look very twisted at all. And I think I'll just switch those. This is a little twisted. I want to make the same pattern I did before, the edge pattern on this half. So that means I need to start with one color uppermost on the left hand and the other color uppermost on the right. So since I already have 2 blue, or well, they're really light purple up on the left, I will have the right side have the black up. Here we go. Now I'm ready to braid my, now I'm ready to braid in one direction, one half of this handshake join, a 4-loop square braid. So I just start. This is exactly what I did in the other demo. And I will braid however long I want. The loop can be somewhat, it's just the length, somewhat, the loop can be somewhat longer than you might think, because since it's going to, as a fastener, as I showed before, it's going to form a kind of lasso. I think I should, you want to get them the right length before you make too many passes of the braid, because then it won't be adjustable after that point. So here's about my last chance to make them all the same length. There, they're pretty good. And it's fine to have it be a little long, the loop be a little longer than you might think, just to make sure it can make a nice noose up there at the top of your braid. It's going to double on it. It's going to double on itself. So that's probably long enough. And it would be neater if I set these on a comb and put a rubber band around the top, as I show on another part of my blog. I just happen not to have any combs handy right now, so I'm kind of going to lay them in a bit of a mess and just detangle them later. 4 loops isn't too bad. Here's my the other half, the 3 loops on this side. I'm going to pull out that, and now I think I'm actually going to just make another. Instead of using a header cord, which I could, I'm going to make another slip knot here and hang very clumsily, and hang this, suspend this from the, just any old way. Oh, let's put that there. Suspend this from my C-clamp. I think I tied it well enough that I'm not going to distort any of, I mean, there's the strands all seem together. There isn't like one stretching out longer or shorter that would get distorted by being pulled. So I'm just going to suspend this. This won't pull out. The way I've tied the slip knot, it will pull out from this end, not from this end. So this is safe to hang over the C-clamp. Here are my 3 loops on this side. Two of them are gold. Doesn't really matter with 3 loops how I set them up. It's going to be the same pattern no matter what. Untangle barely, and let's pull the gold to be. See, they're adjustable. You can pull them. And how I want to adjust the bicolor one is I want to have the join be somewhat that linked join. Here I can show you. You can pull it out so that like that, but you want to pull it so that the join is sort of hidden in roughly in the middle. You know, it's okay if a little bit of it shows, but pretty much just black coming out one side and purple coming out the other side. Hang this back up. And then put it on your fingers and braid a 3-loop braid on this side. I'll untwist it as best I can. It's kind of not really that important. Okay, that looks fine. So I'm adjusting the length of my 2 golds. In fact, I can put them in the same finger and really make sure they're the same. There we go. So 3-loop braid, and the first few tighten hard because you want that handshake join to clasp onto the other part of the handshake nice and tightly. I don't actually believe in tightening extra tight. It crimps your braid, but just the very first few. After that, I tighten a couple times, but I'm not actually pulling. It might look like I'm pulling hard in these videos because I'm rushing along and everything, but I'm not pulling super hard. I'm just pulling widely apart. I'm kind of trying to look over the camera to see when the length is about the same as the other half. And I should look at the camera and see what time it is too. I ran out of time before. Okay, I want to end up. That's too long. I'm going to undo a little bit. I've shown that before. Well, that might be about right. Okay, now I'm going to put the three loops are going to end up in my right hand. It's just how I prefer to start, with 3 on my right, 4 on my left. I'm going to pull out this slip knot, and I could put a header cord through here, and maybe I will, just so that the loops will be the right length, but I also could not. I could just loop this. Oh, there's the join. No ends sticking out from that one loop, and I'm going to, now is when I will now start braiding a unified braid, a square braid with all the loops together, so that will join up the loop. And I can just loop the whole thing over my header, over my C-clamp. If you're tying onto the back of your kitchen chair, you would put a header cord around the handshake join there. So, but see, I can adjust the length. So I'll demo it this way. Now I want to have the loops on my left hand be relatively untwisted, and then to end up with all one color facing upwards. So I'm going to just eyeball that. If I had put these on a comb holder, I wouldn't have to do this bit of untwisting. But it actually looks pretty good. And I seem to have an equal number of black. I'll just put black up. Doesn't matter, it could be blue up, purple up, or black up. So, but on one hand, in this braid, all the dark shanks, all the black shanks will be up, and on the other hand, the bicolor loops should be the opposite, with the purple shank up. That's what will make the vertical striping that I demoed in the previous video. You have to watch out now because you're starting with one on the other hand. It has to be in the opposite configuration. So black up on one hand, blue up on the other, and then you just start braiding. And the first, just make sure that your loops are about the same length, and it'll start joining up at the top. So that's the first transfer. Here comes the second one. I'm turning, it's a square braid, so I'm turning every transfer. And sure enough, as they come over to the other hand, the same color shank will be uppermost that was always on that hand. The first tightening is a little funky because you're joining up the braid. So here comes second cycle. Tighten that up. And tighten a lot, and I would fussy tighten. I would take this after a couple more when all the strands reverse, which will be after 4.5 cycles, 7 loop transfers. They will have switched hands. They will all be on the opposite hands, and then you can really tighten. You can do a little fussy tightening there. I wasn't counting, unfortunately. I think I should be able to recognize. You also want to have the loop stay about the same length, just for ease of braiding. Okay, I think I'm halfway now because I have one bicolor and the two golds are now on the other hand. That's the opposite of how I started. I'll just take this off, and I can fussy tighten by holding it here and just pulling these threads, because there'll be some gappy parts. You know, you're joining up two different, you're doing a different braiding structure than you were before, and there's going to be some loose bits and some, it'd be easier if I didn't have this camera in front of me, because what's also good is to have it hooked on and then pull. Let's see if I can do that with the camera. Look at it and see, oh, it looks like one of those black strands is a little loose, and if you just go to all of the ones on your fingers, you can find, and that was actually it. You can pull, tighten. Let's see if I've shown it. Individually sort of tug on the different black strands, and one of them will go to that loose bit and tighten it up. I think that looks pretty good. Let's get it off. Another look. Yeah. There we go. Now I had, in this one it looks like maybe I did make the gold side of the handshake join a little longer. That's okay. I mean, I guess I braided that a little longer than this one. If I'd been more careful, I could have had the join right at the top, but it really doesn't matter very much. And even though that loop looks so big, it'll be fine when it's doubled over into that special join that I showed you. It's, in fact, almost handier to have a little bit of a longish one. Okay, so now I've tightened up enough, and I'm going to keep going. The way I tightened, the way this one ended up, I can feel a little difference in the length that the loops that were on the right hand just now are a tiny bit longer. With 7 loops, it really isn't that much of a problem because your finger is going to adjust for the length. But if it bugs you, that's another reason that it's good to have a tie at the bottom of each. That's why these knots are a little bit handy to have, because you can undo a knot and retie it so that the loop is shorter. Whereas if you have a solid, like it will only be possible with the gold ones, if you had a solid loop and you wanted to shorten it a bit after you started braiding, it's almost impossible, because tying a knot in it takes up so much length that then it would be much too short. I'm not going to adjust my loop length. This is fine. So then you just keep braiding your braid, and I already showed how to make the rest of it, so I don't think I'm going to go very far. The only thing that's different is that it's a different kind of chevron here. It's very hard for me to, these are too far away from me. I should have a header cord because the camera is in front of me and it's too far back. Let's just get to, say, here. I wonder if maybe a few more passes will show the pattern